What's going on, everybody? Just Haley here, and I'm back again once again with another video. Today's video is going to be focused on the frame you can already see, and that frame is Protea. I really like Protea. She's always been a really fun frame to play, and she's a frame that I was super excited to do a build video for a while back. That one was for Protea, and this was back under the old name and everything else for the channel. So I'm super excited to bring you guys this one, which is my updated Protea video, updated build. And it's going to be two builds for you guys today. The build that we're currently showcasing with the gameplay is actually more of a meme type build, just one that I found was a lot of fun. It can still do pretty well in survival. If you want it to go longer, it certainly can. It's going to be focused predominantly around the temporal erosion augment and the slash grenades, as well as the artillery that she can do with her 1 and 2, and bumping up a ton of damage into her 4, then causing really large AoE explosions to capitalize on that. It's certainly a really fun build. It capitalizes on my favorite part of Protea, which is her 4, so it's a lot of fun. The other build is going to be much more kind of try-hard. If you want to call it meta, you could, but you guys know that I'm not super into meta type builds by now, I hope. That one is going to be using the temporal artillery augment and a little bit of a different playstyle, but we'll get to that when we get there. If you guys like these builds, if you guys like the video, please remember to like, it helps me out a ton. Comment if you guys want to see something else, or comment what you guys think of the build. And as always, subscribe if you guys want to see more content from the channel. We're almost always keeping up a pretty consistent schedule on Twitch now, so if you guys ever want to stop by the Twitch channel as well, feel free to do that, and you guys can always ask for more in-depth explanation on how this build or other builds might work. Without further ado, let's get right into the build, and I'll show you guys how this one is structured and how we have it set up. The first thing you're going to notice is that we don't have any Subsume. That is because, honestly, I really like Protea's kit in general. The slash grenades, her 1, as well as the shield grenades that are built into that, are a primary source of this build's damage, its armor reduction, and her survivability, which all end up being really cool. You can see that she's pretty tanky. She can survive Jade Lights pretty easily with a build like this, especially if you just keep casting down a bunch of shield grenades. She can just keep picking them up and keep getting more and more shields. It's always a lot of fun. And then obviously the slash grenades are really nice just for tick damage, as well as some armor shred with a build like this using temporal erosion. It's a lot of fun and I really enjoy it. The other thing is the artillery you're not going to take off. The dispensary is going to be handling a predominant majority of our energy sustain so that we can keep spamming our abilities. And then obviously her 4, without that you can't even use temporal erosion. Not to mention it's one of the most thematic and fun abilities in the game, so I really like using it when we can. So the build's primary things are going to be heavy spam frame with tons of range. We're getting that range through our overextended and stretch, which are going to get us up to 235% range, and we're getting the spam through a few different things. That's going to be a combination of energize and prime flow with an equilibrium. If you wanted, you could drop the equilibrium, sub out 2 of my red duration shards that I'm running for a little bit more duration, longer temporal anchor, longer artillery, longer slash grenade duration. All of that is really good. She loves duration, but you could sub those out, run 2 equilibrium purple shards for the equilibrium effect. Then you could drop equilibrium, slide stretch up into that forma slot, and then you'd be able to run rolling guard. That would make her a lot tankier. She would be able to go much further, and you could take a kind of fun spammy build and take it further for a little bit more durability. That is a strong recommendation if this is something that you really enjoy. So if you ever wanted to do that, that would be my recommendation on one specific mods you could swap out. Umbral Intensify could also be swapped out for Transient Fortitude, although again, you do really like duration on Protea, so that's, use at your own risk. You're getting a little bit more strength, but you are losing duration. That can feel pretty bad if your artillery units aren't lasting quite as long, or if you're not getting quite as long on your 4, the temporal anchor. It can feel a little bit awkward. Don't forget you can, by the way, cancel the temporal anchor and not be rewound if you don't want to be. That's always an option as well. We're going multi-augmented and energized to not only get the spamming out, but also be able to run more power strength. That's going to give us more armor strip, as well as more strength into the artillery units and those slash procs that we're dealing out. We're going blind rage to help counteract the overextended. Continuity, of course, again, she really loves duration. And then I'm doing prime sure-footed, but if you wanted to do cunning drift for more range, you certainly could. Just then be very careful. If you wanted to run power drift to get the 30%, knockdown resistance, you could. You'd get more strength there too. Or if you wanted to do handspring to get up because you maybe don't have prime sure-footed, that's also an option. Growing power is what I strongly recommend here, and I wouldn't personally go with Augur Reach or Brief Respite because it will interrupt your shield gating, which she does get an enhanced shield gating with her shield grenades. So that's something to keep in mind. She has a bit of anti-synergy with those Augur mods, so keep an eye out for your secondaries in case you're running Augur mods. You don't want to interrupt your shield gating by getting just a little bit of shields back and causing your shield gating to go away on Protea. That's always a little bit feels bad, so that is something that I do recommend to make sure you have an eye out on, because that can feel kind of bad when you're using those shield grenades for that enhanced shield gating for her durability there. As mentioned, the shards that I'm using are 4 duration shards and 1 cast speed. I really like the cast speed shard on her. I was considering putting 2 in here, and I also really like how she synergizes with duration. That said, I do understand that this is a heavy investment for a complete luxury. She does not need this much duration by any means. You could certainly swap these out, but I am getting 60% extra duration here just for running these shards. Personally, I'm probably going to end up shifting to a 2 purple setup and no other shards, so 2 purple, 1 yellow, and that's it for Protea. I don't necessarily play her as much as I used to, so for me that's going to feel like a pretty adequate investment, and then I'll be able to swap in the rolling guard that I was mentioning before over that stretch, just for a little bit of durability if I want to use a build like this for a longer term mission. The other thing that you can do for a longer term mission though is use the other build that I really like for Protea, and this one does something that I'm gonna say is a little sacrilege when it comes to Protea. And that sacrilege type thing is that we are subsuming off her 1, so no shield grenades, no slash grenades for Roar on this other build. And the really fun thing about this is that it allows us to use temporal artillery as a bit of a weapon platform type idea. It's constantly going to be coming with us, just like our Sentinel that we're running with it in this build, always sitting on our shoulder and always dishing out increased damage to the enemies that we're fighting. Roar is going to buff not only the temporal artillery but also our weapons, so that we're getting a nice little weapon platform type frame out of Protea, which we normally wouldn't be able to do. And then we are utilizing the temporal anchor as our primary method of survivability, with fast deflection, Aegis, and Brief Respite to constantly beating our shields back so we can stay alive, even versus enemies that are, resistant to heat and stuff like that, and are going to be harder to kill with the temporal artillery and the artillery unit of Protea. You can see that they're just getting shredded by the damage that she can dish out. It's really cool. You're also going to be benefiting from the explosions from Temporal Anchor. They're not going to be as large as the previous. You're not getting as much fun with the armor strip and stuff like that, the support type ability of the previous build, but this build ends up being really, really fun as well. I do have the 4 red for duration on this build. If you wanted to, again, drop those, you certainly could. You could do 2 red, 2 purple, 1 yellow, and what that's going to allow you to do is drop the equilibrium, and then again you could run rolling guard on a build like this. It would take an additional forma if you wanted to do it, but it would be quite strong. You could also, instead of doing an additional forma, just drop your adaptation to a lower level. Always a certain way to do that too, and you don't really notice the lower level adaptations almost ever, so that's also a really good option here too. Everything else about this build, you're setting up for more duration with your prime continuity. We've got blind rage so that we have more strength, because again, we don't care that much about efficiency with our dispensary able to keep up a lot of that. Temporal artillery, again, it's going to allow our artillery unit to come along with us, just like the Sentinel sitting on our shoulder and amplifying our damage as we move wherever we go. And then we've got prime flow for more energy. That's just in case we ever do end up a little bit low. It's really easy to get back up to full. Aegis, because it's going to help keep you alive when you're not running those shield grenades. Brief Respite is going to help with that as well. Fast deflection synergizes supremely well with Aegis. It's something I always recommend. If you're using Aegis, try to throw in a fast deflection or something like that, or just increase your shields to get more shields back. Combining that with adaptation is going to make most of the fodder enemies hardly a threat ever. The main thing that you'll need to care about are specific Eximus units, and sometimes bombards, those big hits, can sometimes take you down a little bit faster than you're thinking they're going to be. And the other thing to kind of care about is Taxon procs with Protea. They will go right through shields, so that's something to kind of consider. However, with a build like this, as long as you stay in your temporal anchor, you're not going to care about toxin procs. The reason for that is because if you ever do get one shot by a toxin proc, you get rewound. Once you're rewound, you might end up on the floor for a second, but you'll get back up. It'll be very easy to just stay alive despite toxin procs, which is pretty cool. You're also not purely relying on abilities, and with a lot of the new ancient units, the ability resistance that's available to enemies is a little bit out of control. What you are getting out of this is a ton of weapon damage too from your roar. Just make sure that you're using roar whenever you have 100% from your passive, and you're getting about a 400% roar on this build, which is pretty cool. It's about 121, I think, percent on your roar, and that's a really, really strong effect, not just for the artillery unit, but also for your sentinel to get more damage, and also for your weapons to get more damage. Nice little weapon platform Protea. I really like it for longer missions. I really like it for any faction, and just a generalist build for Protea. It's super fun, and it's very strong. As for weapons, as I usually like to give you guys some recommendations, you really can run just about anything that you want here. I'm running the Tenant Archoplasmor, I'm running the Sicarus, one of my favorite pistols, and I'll show you guys the build for that. Sicarus is always a lot of fun, but any Incarnon weapons that you enjoy, any weapons that you have fun with, run those. Melee influence is going to be another really good synergy here because you're getting a ton of status damage from roar, so keep that in mind too. It's like adding a big faction mod to your frame, so melee influence is going to go really hard, and technically melee afflictions works really well as well. I personally prefer melee influence because you can stay mobile, and that's going to help keep you alive with Aegis and all that kind of stuff. Staying mobile is really good. As for pets, the name of the game here is Sentinels, Sentinels, Sentinels. They're going to benefit a ton from sitting over your shoulder and collecting those roar buffs, which is going to make their weapon a lot stronger. Run it with your favorite weapon. I'm running the Artax here because that beam is really nice. You're going to be able to spread a ton of freeze and a ton of cold, as well as the duplex. You're going to spread a ton of statuses as well. I have a Riven on mine, which is giving me viral, so I'm going with that viral heat with a little bit of radiation. Tons of CC, tons of status spread, which is going to help with things like condition overload. It's just really strong. Ends up being better than the flesh pets, the hounds, the Vulpaphyllus, stuff like that, just because those pets tend to wander off. They're going to be doing their own thing. They might not pick up your roar buff, so it's going to be weaker, and all the flesh pets don't give you the shield regeneration, the shield restore that, say, a hound or a sentinel would. But really, whatever pet you want to use is gonna work here. I just personally strongly recommend sentinels. There's also a ton of synergy with Nautilus, being able to group enemies up, and then you can shred them with your artillery unit. It's going to be a really cool synergy there as well. Taxon just gives you an extra layer of survivability because we are removing those shield grenades. That is something that you do want to consider. And there you have it. There are two Protea builds, one incredibly fun and one incredibly strong version, so that you guys can kind of pick what you guys want there. I do strongly recommend running Rolling Guard if you're looking for something a little bit tankier, a little bit more durability, and doing some slight shifts to things for that, just in case, as you see, you do get knocked down a little bit more if you don't have that Rolling Guard to be able to kind of crutch back onto and pay attention to. The other thing is always just going to be making sure that you keep your buffs up and stuff like that. That's something I am notoriously very, very bad at. That's another reason I really like the duration. So it's just something else to kind of keep in mind. The other thing would be just if you guys are running any type of content specifically and you want to swap in faction mods and things like that, you certainly can make those choices. I personally don't like faction mods, so I almost never run them because I always forget to swap them. I've shown one build that used a faction mod so far, and in that build, the gameplay itself, I forgot to swap the faction mod, and that's just kind of how I always have been. I'm really lazy when it comes to that stuff. Until they make something that automatically swaps the faction mods for me, I'm probably never going to use them consistently, so that's just kind of me. I just want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and until next time, please remember, please, that I love your faces. I'll catch you later. Bye.